Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Ach, lieben, Christen, seid, getrost, which translates to, Ah, dear Christians, be comforted. It's a pretty straightforward chorale. I think we should just hop right into it. So we are in the key of A minor to start things off. We have no key signature, and we start on A minor and we end on A major, so there's like a Picardy third being involved here. So like I said, we start on a 1 chord, which would be A minor in this case, with a passing tone in the alto, and then we have E, C, G, and C. That's a C major triad. That would be a 3 over E, so that would be a 3-6 chord, so a C major in first inversion. We then have F sharp A, F natural A, I'm confusing my clefs here, F, C, F, and A, which is an F major triad in in root position. Sorry, I've had a long day today, and it's in root position here, so that's a 3 going to 6, that's where 3 usually wants to go, and if we look ahead to the next cadence, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C major. So I'm going to say that this F chord is our departure from A minor to C major here. And this is now reanalyzed as a 4 chord. We have a passing tone in the soprano, E, C, G, and C. We've seen this chord before, so this is now a 1-6 chord because we're in the key of C. That's our tonic. Passing tones in the outer voices. And then we have a C major triad, but this time it's in root position, so no need to reiterate the Roman numeral. We'll just put 5-3 there because the figure bass is what's changing. And then we have F, C, A, and D. That is a 2 chord. It's a 7 chord and it's in first inversion, so that would be a 2-6-5. Kind of like a little bit of filigree here. Before we get G, B, G, and D with a passing 7th in the alto. So that would be a 5 chord. And then we cadence on 1, a 2-5-1 in the key of C major. So looking ahead, we have a cadence on A major here, which is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A minor. We just see the Picardy third here, which is kind of interesting to see at the end of the A section. We usually see this at the end of chorales. It's conventional to see the Picardy third at the end, but to see it at the end of the first section is a little bit unusual. So we have A, F sharp, and C. An F sharp diminished triad in first inversion would be the 7-6 of 5, as F sharp is the leading tone to G, which is our dominant. Then we have G, D, G, and B, our 5 chord. And then we have D, D, F, and A. That's a D minor triad. That would be 2 in the key of C major. And I think that, looking ahead, I think this might be our modulation point back to A minor. And we could analyze this as 4 now. And then A, C, E, and C. 4 goes to 1 here, passing 7th in the bass and a passing tone in the tenor. And then we have F, A, and D. We have another D minor triad, but this time it's in first inversion rather than being in root position. We have some passing tones in the outer voices, one of them being a passing 7th. And then we have D, F, A, and B. That is a 2 chord. It's half diminished and it's in first inversion, so that'd be a 2-6-5. E, G sharp, and B with a passing 7th in the tenor. That would be a 5 chord in root position, an E major triad, and then we cadence on 1. But this time it's major because, well, we have C sharp as opposed to C natural. Alright, now we're looking ahead, and I think this is the most interesting part of the chorale, this section right here. Right after the fermata right here, we get a little bit of a break, and I'm pretty convinced that we've modulated to the key of C major briefly. We have a mid-phrase modulation. If you look, it's just a bunch of 5. It's just a bunch of 5 and 1. So if we look right here, I think we modulate to C. It's what it sounds like, kind of similarly to the chorale we looked at yesterday, where the modulation, where we weren't 100% certain that the modulation happened, even though we saw a lot of 6 going to 3, 6 going to 3, or 3 going to 6, whichever came first. It's when you alternate the two chords and you hear a chord other than the tonic a lot, has the effect of kind of sounding like a modulation, but it didn't sound quite as modulatory as this does. If we're looking in the key of C major, this would be a direct modulation, right? This G major triad right here would be 5, and then C, C, G, and E would be 5 going to 1, with a passing tone in the bass. Then E, G, G, and E. It's interesting because that would be an E minor triad. The lack of G sharp here is kind of what makes this feel like C major rather than E minor. I'm going to call this a 3 chord because it is an E minor triad in root position, and 1 can go to 3, but an E minor triad is kind of like a 1 chord in first inversion, but the only difference being the B. Well, we have E, G, G, and E. There's really no fifth there to confirm whether or not we're looking at a rootless 1 chord or incomplete 3 chord. So I'll put 6 underneath. I think both analyses are valid. I had them both written down in my notes because I couldn't quite verify. But we have some passing tones in the lower voices. And then we have G, B, D, and B. That's a root position 5 chord. 3 goes to 5 sometimes, as 1 and 3 are similar. We have some passing tones in the upper voices, so there's a little bit of like rhythmic imitation or motivic imitation going on here. And then we have F, A, D. That is a D minor triad in first inversion, and I think this is where we go back to A minor, right here, 4, 6. If we even went to A minor in the first place, it sounds like we're in C major here. I'm hard pressed to believe that we're not in the key of C major during this part. It's just what it sounds like. But by the time we anticipate the cadence, because this cadence right here is a half cadence in A minor, there has to be a modulation that occurs somewhere in the analysis, right? And I think this 4, 6 going to 1 makes sense, right? Because A, C, E, and C, just a root position A minor triad, with some passing tones in the lower voices as well. And then we get ready with another A minor triad, but this time it's in first inversion, so we'll just have that change in the figure bass. Passing tone in the bass, E, E, G sharp, and B. That's our half cadence, 1 to 5. Okay. So if we look ahead, next cadence is a perfect authentic cadence again, but this time it's in the key of G major, which is kind of interesting. A minor and G major are nearby keys, but modulating to the key of the subtonic is kind of a modal thing to do. It has a modal sound, bringing attention to that flat 7. But this A minor right here, 5 going to 1 with the passing 7th on the bass, I think we're moving straight ahead to the key of G major here, and we can just reanalyze that as 2 because we start seeing F sharps on the next beat. So F sharp, A, and D, that's a 5, 6 chord. So if we think about this instead of 5, 1, and we think about it as 5, 2 in the key of G major to 5, that makes sense, right? And we have some passing tones in the tenor, the bass and the alto. And we have D, F sharp, and A. This is just 5, 3, right? Because it's still a D major triad. We then get E, G, E, and C. That's a C major triad in first inversion, so 4, 6 now because we're thinking in the key of G major with some passing tones in the lower voices. G, B, D, and B. That's a 1 chord in root position, right? Because we're thinking in terms of G major. And then we get some arpeggiation going on in the inner voices here. Remember, these are not non-chord tones. If you're analyzing quickly, you might mark them as such, but G and B are both chord tones because we're thinking in terms of a G major triad here. And then we have C, E, G, and A, and C. These are all very brief, so I'm not 100% sure as to whether or not this is a 4 chord or a 2, 6, 5. My hunch tells me that it's a 4 chord in root position because the bass is going 4, 5, 1. But I think saying 2, 6, 5 is also a valid analysis here. Just depends on your outlook and what you hear. But they're both predominant chords, so 6 of one and half dozen of another. And And these are both chord tones happening on the and of the beat. Then we have D, D, F sharp, and A. It's a 5 chord with a passing 7th in the tenor. And then we have a 1 chord, perfect authentic cadence. So if we look ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in A. We're going to not immediately modulate because F sharp is still seen here going to a G natural, which would be more of a modal sound than anything else, but I think we're still in the key of G major here. Here we have another C major triad, E, G, E, and C. It's in first inversion though, with some passing tones in the bass. It's kind of like a passing 7th chord. Remember when you have a 4 chord and the third of the chord goes up by a whole step, it turns into a 7 chord, which kind of creates the 4-7-1 progression, which is what we get. G, B, D, and B. That's just a root position G major triad with some passing tones in the inner voices. And then here is where it gets kind of interesting. I think the modulation happens on beat 2 here. F sharp, D, F sharp, and A. That's a first inversion D major triad, but I think Bach is being kind of zesty with this progression here because I think this is a 4-6 chord in the key of A minor, because the F sharp, G sharp, A is implying that we are now contextualizing that F sharp not as a leading tone, but as a submediant, which is really cool because we have E, F sharp, G, and then we have F sharp, G sharp, A. So it's kind of cool. It's like we get a little bit of like almost like a quasi-sequence going on here with what's going on in the bass, which is neat. But I'm pretty convinced that this 4 chord is what the 4 chord is what's being highlighted as the modulation point. We have some passing tones in the soprano, the alto, and the bass, and then we immediately go to A minor in root position, A, C, E, and C. Passing 7th in the bass, passing tone in the tenor, and then we have F, A, and D. We have the F natural again. This is a D minor triad in first inversion, E, C, and C. These are all known chord tones. And then we have, going into our final cadence, we have D, A. Goodness, I'm confusing my clefs. Pardon me. D, F, A, and B. That is a 2 chord, so that'd be B diminished. It's half diminished, and it's in first inversion, so 2, 6, 5. And similar to how we saw before, like here, we have some things that look like non-chord tones, but he's just arpeggiating the chord. And it goes down here where we have E, B, G sharp, and B. Root position, E major triad. Again, we have some like arpeggiation going on where the tenor gets a really active line, and every voice has their own rhythm. It's really interesting. And then we cadence on 1. So we have parallelism between the cadences. Same thing going on at the end of the A section. Pretty much the same thing going on at the end of the B section too. Just a different counterpoint, but the same general harmonic trajectory. Pretty straightforward chorale. I think the fact that he explored G major and we had this direct modulation to C here, that was pretty interesting. Not 100% convinced that we're modulating to C here, but I'm mostly certain it's just what it sounds like. It's kind of interesting to start in A minor and modulate so quickly to C major at the beginning. It's cool when composers do that. Other than that, the chorale was pretty straightforward to analyze. The soprano is a very active line here, so I'm not 100% certain if this is the original chorale melody or if Bach embellished the chorale melody, but I would not expect simple melodies that were expected to be sung by the congregation to have 16th notes in them, but sometimes you see them in there, and I don't know if that's a slight variation or if it's genuine to the original melody. That being said, interesting chorale. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis. Thank you so much for watching the video, and take care.